Good day, everyone. My name is Rich Chester. I'm the Director of Business Intelligence for LPA Software Solutions, and I'm pleased to be with you today to talk to you about what's new in the latest release of IBM Cognos Business Intelligence, which has been rebranded Cognos Analytics. Current version is also known as version 11, and if you were to download it today, you'd be downloading version 11.0.2.
Throughout the webinar today, you may find you have some questions. I encourage you to please submit those via the WebEx chat capability. At the end of today's session, I'll answer as many questions as time allows. And after the webinar, I'll answer any remaining questions by email. So I do promise to answer all questions submitted, either on the air or directly after the webinar. The webinar today is going to start with a brief description of this notion called self-service business intelligence. And the reason I want to start there is because the Cognos Analytics release is primarily targeted at adding those capabilities to the platform that we're familiar with in Cognos 8 and Cognos 10 that implement what IBM calls smarter self-service. So I figured a grounding on this notion of self-service might be a good place to start. I'll follow that with a demonstration of the new Cognos Analytics interface. There's a new portal called the Welcome portal that replaces Cognos Connection. There's a whole new navigation concept that's baked into it, and the whole orientation of the portal and all of the tools to create dashboards, to create reports, and so on are oriented around enabling our end users to do more without IT intervention. After the demo, I'm going to flip back to some slides, and I'll talk to you about what's in and what's out relative to Cognos 10. So what are the things in 10 that moved forward to 11? What are the things that are changed relative to 10? And that will sort of give you a start on the notion of what it means about to upgrade. Now, LPA has already recorded and posted a webinar specifically about upgrading to Cognos Analytics. It's out on our website, www.lpa.com/resources. So if you want an hour devoted specifically to the topic of upgrades, I'd encourage you to get onto our website and take a look at that webinar. It will probably answer a bunch of your questions. And then, as I said before, with the time remaining, I'll answer as many questions as you submitted by the chat window, and then I'll follow up after the webinar with any unanswered questions via email. So let's get started. So self-service business intelligence has been described by Gartner, and it essentially means that end users can design and deploy reports and analyses on an enterprise tool that supports such reports and analyses from both the centralized corporate data assets and their own data files. So the notion here is that if I need a stewarded data report, I can get that from this tool. If I need a report that's about the data that is in my Excel files on my PC, I can get those with this tool. And if I need to combine both of those into a single report, I can do that with the tool as well. Now, Gartner further goes on to make a dire prediction. Their dire prediction is that due to a lack of governance or of sufficient governance, most self-service initiatives are going to fail. And by fail, it means that people will be using data from the self-service reports and analyses that is not accurate, right? So the single version of the truth, the absolute truth that we're used to by working with our stewarded data, our centrally managed data and reports, is endangered by this notion of self-service because I can upload assets, I can add those data assets to the corporate assets. And then if I do that incorrectly, I will end up with data on my reports that does not accurately reflect the state of the business. And therefore, I will make bad decisions. Now, despite that dire prediction, the BI self-service market, according to Gartner, is going to grow 30% a year. Now, we at LPA all agree that self-service BI is absolutely inevitable. In fact, you could argue that self-service BI is already underway in most organizations. Think about the number of folks that we have using our BI environments to download that data to Excel, where at that point, anything could happen, quote unquote. New data assets could be added to that data. That data could be used in calculations and further analysis, and there could be mistakes in those calculations. So BI, self-service BI, has already been in use for years in our organizations, and just through the use of Excel. You might have brought in a desktop BI solution wherein you are already implementing self-service BI from the use of that tool. But the Gartner tool notion is that there's one tool that supports all BI needs, both the stewarded, centralized, managed BI as well as the self-service BI. So if self-service BI is inevitable, what are the 4 factors that make it successful? The first is that it's easy to use, that it's fast, that it's smart, and then back to that governance concept, that it's trusted. So easy to use, not so much just from the interface perspective, although that is important, but also easy to use in terms of creating visualizations that are both compelling and informative. Fast and agile in terms of, again, responsiveness of the platform, but that's sort of table stakes. But agile in that it lets me leverage my local data in addition to my corporate data. Smart in that it doesn't make me learn how to be a data scientist or a SQL programmer. Indeed, smart will ultimately mean being able to express my analytical needs in my native language and have the system suggest analyses that match my needs. And then trusted gets us right back to this governance component, that self-service BI, the results of my self-service activities, need to respect security, need to be subject to some level of data stewardship, and the outcome, the analytics, the operations I perform against that data need to be subject to some level of stewardship. Not so much that they get in the way and no longer give me the benefits of being self-directed and self-sufficient, but enough so that the results of my analysis are trusted. So easy, fast, smart, and trusted, those are the watchwords, the keywords for any platform that purports to be supporting self-service. Now, when we think about business intelligence and analytics, there's 3 typical things we need to think about in terms of phases of use. The first is modeling. Modeling, for our purposes here, is the act of exposing your data assets to folks who are going to author dashboards, reports, analyses, and so on against that data. So modeling of corporate assets we've done in the Cognos BI world using Framework Manager, and indeed in Cognos Analytics, Framework Manager continues to be the tool for that specific purpose. But there's a new tool introduced in Cognos Analytics that I will give you a brief demonstration of today that produces metadata known as a data module. So in addition to packages that we publish from Framework Manager to expose our data assets, we'll also be able to create data modules using the web-based interface from the Cognos Analytics to expose data assets for authoring. And then the next step, of course, is to use those data assets to author reports, to author dashboards, to author analyses, to express data that is important as I make my data-driven business decisions that our analytics platform is helping us achieve. And then the third is to use those analytics, to use those reports and dashboards and analyses to make those decisions, and to use them on any device without sacrificing functionality on those devices. With the release of Cognos Analytics, the consumption experience on the iOS platform, on the Android platform, and on your seated browsers, i.e. Safari, Chrome, and Firefox, you'll find is essentially the same experience now. No longer do we have a Cognos Connection experience and a app experience. The same experience on all devices is what this release is after. Indeed, you can now author dashboards on the mobile platforms, which you could never author new things on those mobile platforms in the Cognos world in the past. So model to expose our assets, author with those assets, consume what we've authored to make better business decisions for our organizations. Those are sort of the key components. And I'm going to look at with you Cognos Analytics today relative to all 3 of those. but I'm going to actually do them backwards. I'm going to start with consumption, I'm going to show you authoring, and then I'm going to show you this new data module modeling. So with that said, let me show you Cognos Analytics. I've installed Cognos Analytics on a server in my farm. Again, in that webinar I referenced earlier about upgrading, I go over all the installation options for Cognos Analytics, including the fact that there is no longer the need for a gateway. You can include a gateway, and when you install it, you would typically install it so you can achieve single sign-on. But if you don't need single sign-on, actually the gateway is optional. So while it is very, very similar to installing Cognos 10, there are some unique differences in installing. But one thing is for sure, your authentication providers, how you authorize, how you authenticate is identical in both platforms. And so you saw I logged in, and I've hit the new portal. This is the welcome portal. As you can see, it's quite different looking than the Cognos connection. And the Cognos connection has, for all intents and purposes, been retired. So let me orient you to this interface. Up here in the corner is the personal area. This is where I would set my preferences, go to my inbox if you're using that functionality, sign out of my authentication provider, and so on. This notion of subscriptions is new, and I'm going to relate subscriptions up here in the corner where I manage all of the subscriptions I have. Down here on notifications, notifications is where any report I've subscribed to, and this notion of subscription is whenever a report is run and saved and a new version is available, if I have subscribed to that report, I will get a notification every time a new version is available, and this notification area will tell me that I have new versions waiting for me. So it's a little bit different than scheduling a report and having it emailed to me. It's about it being scheduled by others and me being notified when there's a new version. So those two sort of go hand in hand. But this is the personal area. Anytime you see an ellipsis, whether it is horizontal like this one or vertical, that's the More button, and More gives me options. They're context-sensitive options. I'm going to skip this guy for just a minute, but I will come back to him. Let me go over here to the left. This top area has to do with finding and leveraging existing analyses and reports. Down here, I've got the new area. That's about creating new objects. I'm going to actually focus initially here on finding and running existing objects. I'm going to start with search. Now, search is what search does. That's not a new concept for any of us. But the new thing in Cognos 11 versus Cognos 10 is this. Whenever I create a new object in Cognos 10, it is automatically indexed for me at that time. So in Cognos, did I say Cognos 10? I meant in Cognos Analytics. So in Cognos 10, what I had to do is I had to launch an index job periodically. It might have been once an hour or once a day. And that index job would find all of the new objects and make them available for search. So there was a lag time between the creation of a new object and its availability to be searched. In this search, whenever I've created anything new in Cognos Analytics, it's immediately indexed, and within seconds of it being created, provided I have access to it, I can enter a search, and that new thing will be included in my search results if it applies. So that's the new thing about search. My content is what replaced my folders. So it's still the private area where I can store items that are unique to me that no one else in the system can access. Public folders is now called team content. So my content, team content versus my folders, public folders. Now you notice this flyout orientation of navigation. Let me continue to show you that notion. So I'm going to click on my samples folder. It's going to fly out. I'm going to pick on my reports folder. It's going to fly out. Now I've got 3 flyouts. As soon as I click on standard reports folder, the first panel will disappear and I'll have only 3 flyouts visible. Now I can get back to that first panel by clicking on the arrow, but the notion is I'll have at most 3 flyouts visible when I'm navigating. Now, you might say that's an interesting navigation feature, but I sort of liked the one that was in Cognos Connection. Well, there are 2 views for navigation. If I use the Switch Views button, I can do what's called the wide view. And you see up here, I've got my breadcrumbs, just like I had in Cognos Connection. I can scooch back up to a previous locale, and as I navigate, it fills it in. So I can work with the wide view, or I can work with the flyout view. Notice the More buttons. If I click on the More button, this is where I get a collection of actions that I can perform against the item. I'm going to go ahead and just click on the item, and I'm going to go ahead and run a report. Now, one of the interesting things in the Cognos Analytics world is that with the viewer of a report, there are actually two viewers in the product. The first viewer is the same viewer we used in 10.2.2. So all the reports that we upgrade that use that viewer are going to run identically after upgrade because it's the same viewer that's baked into the Cognos Analytics tool. But there's a second viewer. The second viewer is for what is called an interactive report. Interactive reports are reports that when I click on an object, I get a toolbar. More on this in a moment when I get to authoring, but the notion with the interactive viewer is that the line between consuming a report, look but don't touch, and full-on authoring using the replacement for Report Studio and Cognos Workspace Advanced is blurred, because in an interactive report, I can do slight authoring, if you will, something that is between the functionality of the full-on reporting tool and doing just standard consumption that we're used to from the previous releases. So we'll do a little bit with this in a moment, but I want you to understand that there are two viewers. The other thing I want you to understand is this guy in the middle. In the old Cognos connection, when I ran a report, it would replace the portal with the viewer and my report would run. To get back to the Cognos connection portal, I had to close that report. I had to hit my return key or my home key, and then I could run another report. But I couldn't have multiple reports open in the same session in that one window. With Cognos Analytics, I get to have as many reports open as I want, and I can manage them using this button here in the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and run a second report. I'll run my employee satisfaction report. And just to show you that I'll have multiple reports open here and that I can move between them. So if I wanted to get back and author a new report while I still have these two employee reports open, I can certainly do that. You close things by clicking on this remove button. But I can have multiple objects open and I can manage them all through this central area. I'm going to click back on welcome so we can continue our tour of the portal. So team content, my content, two views, wide view and flyout view. And then this notion of running a report, and the report could be interactive or non-interactive. Last one in this collection is the recent. If I ran something recently, then it gets listed in my recent reports, and I can very quickly come back to things I've run recently by leveraging things in the recent list. So that's a new feature, comes in handy. So that's for using existing analyses that have already been written, that I just need to find the one I want, run the one I want, leverage it, and then I can have as many open as I want and manage them through this central button. Now let's talk about the creation of new objects. Under New, you'll see that I can create reports, dashboards, and data modules, and then I have this thing called Other. I'm going to click on Other first so I can talk to you about the legacy studios. When Cognos 10.2.2 was released, IBM announced that they would no longer support Analysis Studio or Query Studio in any future releases. It turns out that in this version 11, those studios are still here. So you could install 11 and expose this other collection of legacy tools. That's actually an option that you pick when you install, so you don't have to ever expose these tools if you don't want to. But if you still need these tools as you move forward toward converging on the one reporting tool that's now part of analytics, you can install them and they'll still be here, and they work exactly the same way as they did in 10.2.2. When you click one of them, they'll just open in a new tab and they'll look exactly like they used to. So if I just quickly open up Query Studio here, just to give you the confidence that what I said. So it looks just like 10, and you see it's in a tab, it's not inside of the studio, or of the portal, pardon me. interesting that Cognos Workspace is now considered a legacy tool. And that's because there's a new dashboarding tool that is baked into Cognos Analytics. But Workspace is exactly the same as it was in Cognos 10.2.2 with one exception. And that exception is that the integration between Workspace and Cognos Workspace Advanced is no longer in the tool. And that's because there is no longer a Cognos Workspace Advanced in Cognos Analytics. Instead, there's a new reporting tool, and that's what I'm going to show you next. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new report in the tool. Now, what we're used to when we create a report in previous versions is a pop-up asking us to select a package. That's actually not the experience with this tool. In this tool, we get this pop-up asking us to pick a layout. Now, these templates are supplied by IBM as a starter collection of templates, but you can easily manage these templates. They all live in a folder out in the team content area called templates. If you want to add new ones, if you want to modify the ones that are there, you can. Now, if you don't have any templates in your templates folder, or you will get that old pop-up that asks you for whether you want to do a list, a crosstab, or a chart. But if you do have templates, you get to pick a template, which I'm going to go ahead and just pick a simple one for this demo. Now I need to specify my package. So I'm going to click over here, and I'm going to navigate to Samples, Models, Go Sales Query, and pick my package. And then on the left now, you'll see a familiar site. You'll see the metadata view of that package that we're used to seeing in the Report Studio and Cognos Workspace Advanced tools. This tool is simply called IBM Cognos Analytics Reporting. This plus is new. Anytime you have an empty cell, you get this plus on it in the tool. And when you click on it, it gives you some of the more common things that you might want to create. I'll go ahead and choose a list and create a list. Creating a list is the same operations and activities that it used to be. So I'll quickly drag over a few non-measures. I'll drop in a couple of measures. Now, you might have noticed in this interface that there's no button bar. There's no collection of buttons along the top up here like there is in the old tools. Also, you might have noticed that there's no property sheet over here at the bottom of the insertable object pane, and you also might have noticed there's no tabs here. So one of the concepts that IBM is implementing with this release that is intended to help all users of the reporting tool be comfortable in the reporting tool is to only expose the things you need at the time you need them. So the notion is that having every possible button you could click up and visible all the time, having the property sheet up and visible all the time, those things made the old reporting tools intimidating for people who were more beginners. So to remove that intimidation factor and make this one interface applicable to all user types, they've just chosen a methodology of presenting your options when you need them. So you might have noticed that there is a button bar, but it's context sensitive. What you click on, a collection of buttons comes up, and you can leverage those buttons. So until you click on it, you don't get the buttons, right? If I select the body, I've got the buttons that are applicable to the body. Not every possible button in the tool anymore, just the buttons that are applicable to what I've selected. So I'll go ahead and group this column. I'll group this column, right? And I'll run my report. No new output formats introduced. They're all the same output formats as in Cognos 10. I'll run an HTML. And I'll get the list report that I expect. Now, in Cognos Workspace Advanced, you know that you could author while data was being displayed, and you can do that in the new reporting tool as well. Up here in the page views area, I'm going to pick page preview. So now I'm still in the authoring environment, right? I didn't pop up a new tab like when I ran it, and I'm seeing data. Well, and then let's suppose I want to set my data format. Now, if you happen to be a person who already knows the reporting tools from the previous releases, you might be very comfortable with the property sheet. If you are, you can turn the property sheet on. I'll go ahead and do that and change the data format of my columns so that I have 0 decimal places. Okay, so as I do my activities, I can turn on and off the components I'm used to. The buttons come up and they're in context of what I've clicked. But the whole notion here is that the interface is far less intimidating, and it's also fairly intuitive. Now, you might ask yourself, well, where's my Page Explorer? Where's my Query Explorer? Are those still part of the tool? And yes, they are. There's a Navigate button here that brings up your Explorers. So here's your Page Explorer. Here's your Query Explorer. If I want to create a prompt page, I click here, and then I go to my toolbox. My toolbox is this icon here. And you see I could add a prompt page to my report. If I want to go back now and navigate back to my query, I can go in, navigate to my query, and my tools for my query are here. Back on my page, of course, I need tools like my layout tools. Maybe I want to add another object like a crosstab. I've got this pinned area where I can put my favorite tools at the top. They're organized into the types of tools that they are. If I want to add a query calculation, I can do that. And then this will look familiar to folks who have authored. This is the standard expression editor and so on. So very quick intro to this reporting tool. The heuristic here, the notion here is that this tool will work for all levels of user, except for very, very beginners. So what is the very, very beginners tool? Well, let's get back to that consumption notion that I talked about earlier. Let me go ahead and actually run a report that I brought over from a Cognos 10 environment. So here's a Cognos Workspace Advanced report. Very, very simple report. Now, when you convert reports from previous versions, they come over as non-interactive reports. They're running in the old Cognos 10 viewer. In other words, these are look but don't touch reports. If I click on it, I get no button bars. I get no opportunities to make any changes to the look and feel. This is a what you see is what you get. If I need someone to convert this, let's say, to a bar chart, then I need to have someone author an updated report or change this report. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this report quite quickly from a non-interactive report to an interactive report. So I'll click on my edit button. This takes me into full-on reporting. So it takes me back to that reporting environment we were just in. I'm going to go to my navigator and click on my report. To look at report properties, I actually look at my property sheet, which I think makes a whole lot more sense than report properties being under a menu item like they were in the previous release. Run with full interactivity. I'm going to set it to yes. Save my report. I'll go ahead and close this, and then let me rerun that report. Now when I select, I get a button bar. Let me select over here. Notice I've got buttons that give me swap rows and columns, for example. I got a button that lets me convert this to a bar chart, for example. So I have got what amounts to a fundamentals, a basic authoring capability for this report while I'm consuming it. So the lines between consumption and authoring have been blurred. I've got consume with no capability to change. I have full-on authoring. In the middle, I have this interactive view, which allows me to do some level of authoring without having to learn or enter into that full-blown tool. So this is a new option for beginners that is unique to the Cognos Analytics interface, is this interactive viewing. So that's new and I think very useful and exciting. So that's a quick view of authoring new reports. I'm going to go ahead and close that, go back to my welcome screen. Notice that I changed it, so it needs me to save it. When I save it, if I have access to overwrite the object I started with, it will make this the new copy of the report. If I use this out of team content, and team content would be our managed area, I probably wouldn't have, as a regular user, the ability to overwrite that report. So here, if I wanted to save it, I would have to save it into my, my content area. So all the security rules we're used to still apply. couple of other new things that we could do, new data modules and new dashboards. But what I first want to show you is this other new object called upload files, because I'm going to upload a file and I'm going to use it in a dashboard and in a data module. So let me upload a file from my desktop. I've got this historical sales Excel file. So it's going to upload that Excel file, and then it's going to examine it, and then it's going to present an overview screen to me that will allow me to set some basic metadata. It's a pretty big file, so it took a few seconds there to upload it. Now it's doing the analysis. In a moment, it's going to clear and present me with my data and my columns. Now, what I do in this view is really quite simple. I can turn on and off columns. Do I want them included or not? That's, basics. And then what it'll let me do is it'll let me specify which are measures and which are non-measures. So none of these are measures, including the year. Certainly don't want to be totaling up years. And product numbers are not measures. And you see it's made a guess based on my upload. And I can say no quantity is or isn't a measure just by clicking on the button. Turns out it actually got it right. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now, when I upload files, I can't write reports against them directly just yet, but I could create a dashboard against them. So let me show you quickly this notion of dashboarding. Dashboards also have a collection of templates and layouts in 3 basic forms. I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick free-form dashboard. And by the way, I do anticipate recording and presenting a webinar on the dashboard and data module components. So while today it will be a very quick view of those 2 components, look out for a notification of a webinar that will broadcast and record like we always do on just dashboards and data modules that will delve into them a little deeper. For now, let's just go ahead and let's select some data. And I'm going to go to my content where that uploaded file lives. I can move that to public folders if that file needs to be shared. But the notion is, you see it didn't even ask me. The notion is my data belongs to me, so that it's going to put it into my content. And then I have to take a conscious decision to move it to team content if I want to share it. So I'm going to drag over a non-measure and drop it into my dashboard. By the way, this dashboard technology comes directly from the world of Watson Analytics. So if you know Watson Analytics, this is going to look very familiar. I pulled over a non-measure, dropped it on my dashboard. The automatic visualization is to give me the list of unique values, because what else are you going to do with a non-measure dropped in? But let me drop in a measure into that same object. Now you see it's going to give me a bar chart, graphing the non-measures as the looks like the category in this case, and the measure as my axis. If I drop in another non-measure, let's say product line, you'll see that it made the product line the series automatically. Now I can change that. I can come in and I can work directly with the drop zones on this object, but you see it's building a visualization on the fly for me as I go. Now if I drop country onto my dashboard, you'll see it gives me the unique lists of countries. But the cool thing is that it's linked those objects. So if I highlight items in this list, it is going to filter this object. Now let me just drag over planned revenue alone, drag over a measure alone. And what it does for measures that you drop is it summarizes them. Now if you don't like the summary, in this case, it did a total, which is actually the correct summary for this one. You can change the summary, and let's do the maximum revenue or the minimum revenue. You can also do the counts and the average. I'll do an average planned revenue here, and then I'll do my planned revenue again, and then I'll have both the summed one and the planned one. So the notion of dashboards is that I can quickly create a dashboard by dragging and dropping from any data source I pick. I can use uploaded files, or I can use a new metadata object called a data module. So let me go ahead and show you one. There's some more things here. Let me show you quickly. If you don't want it to generate your visualizations automatically. You can pick the visualization you'd like to populate. You see that includes maps and bubble charts and other interesting visualizations. So I did the automatic visualize it for me. And then you can change it after it's visualized. You can click down here and you can change the visualization, or you could just start with the visualization you want and populate it. Text items can be added. A library of shapes that you might want to add for visual interest on your dashboard. Media, so if you want a web page, if you want to have a YouTube video, if you want to have any other media, you could use that here. This gets back to the data I've selected. I can put data from more than one uploaded file or data from more than one data module on my dashboard. I can't go across files or data modules in the same object. Very similar actually to Cognos Workspace from the point of view of mix and match across metadata. If I want to put data from 3 files together in one object, I'll have had to use those uploaded files in a data module so that I can do joins between those files. And normally you would hear me say something about I'd have to use Framework Manager, but as I said in the preamble, there's a new data module capability that is another modeling tool, a modeling tool I might choose to give to my power users. Doesn't replace Framework Manager, but it is an addition to Framework Manager. So I'll show you that in a moment. I just want to show you one more thing. And this is the capability I want to show you. Earlier I told you that your self-service tools need to morph and migrate to the ability to use natural language. Now I'm not going to try to express that Cognos Analytics is all the way there. However, intent-based analytics is part of the tool. I'm going to write in here revenue by product line. When I do that, it's going to search the metadata I have access to in the portal, and it's going to suggest for me visualizations that match my intended analysis, and it will look out at what I've got. Now, as you saw, I don't have a whole lot of stuff loaded on the my environment here, but it looked at my historical data, and that's the data that I had already pulled in and said I want to use as a data source for this dashboard. But you'll notice it also looked at a data module that I hadn't pulled in to the dashboard yet. It's looking at all of the metadata I have access to and trying to satisfy my need for this analysis. And then I can say, use this one, and it'll drop that analysis in. So intent-based analysis is absolutely baked into the tool. Is it perfect yet? Is it full-on English understanding yet? No, but it's a start. It's getting there. And I think it's very exciting. So that's enough on dashboards. Let's quickly take a look at this notion of metadata modeling online, web-based modeling. First, I have to introduce you to one more concept, and that's called a data server. And I haven't clicked down here on this button yet, which is the Manage button, which I'll do right now. So Manage is for administrators. So I'm logged in as an administrator, so I have the Manage button. And the administration world is exactly the same as it was from the point of view of launching the administration tool in Cognos 10. As you'll see when this comes up, it's the same tool in Cognos 11. So all the same features and functions for the administration are here. You might have noticed there's a bunch of other ones, though, under Manage. These are subcomponents of administration that you might choose to delegate to end users, to super users and groups. You don't have to. You control security and capabilities and who has what exactly the same way as you did in 10. And so you can determine who gets what and what tools and what capabilities, just like you did before. One of the options that's new, though, is you could delegate components of administration to other users. They would still need an administrator license, right? So they would still have to be quote unquote administrators, but they don't have to be given every administrative right anymore. You can mix and match it. But one of the things I want to point out is a notion called the data server. Now, a data server is a data source connection that I have set up to allow used in the web-based modeling tool called data modules, right? So I have a collection of data source connections in this installation of Cognos. I've got maybe 15 of them. However, I have only set the properties on 2 of them that say my web-based modelers can use these as a source for those data modules. So data servers are database connections that you can use for web-based modeling. And so you manage the connections that can be used that way. And you see I can create a new one here if I want to. They're all DQM, not CQM. These they have to be here. So data servers are connections to databases directly for use in modeling. So just want to introduce that concept. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a data module. Now, data modules can be used as the source for a new dashboard or a new report. So reports can come from packages and data modules. Dashboards can come from uploaded files and data modules. And you see, I can actually mix and match. So if I take my uploaded file and add that as, and then I go out to my data warehouse, and IBM recommends that you model with data modules more from data warehouses than from transaction systems, just for the simplicity of modeling from a data warehouse, a star schema, let's say. So here I've got my data that I'm going to use selected. I'll click Start. It's going to bring over the metadata for those guys, and it's going to allow me to start modeling. Earlier again, I talked about this intent-based notion. I'm going to enter my intent for this model. I'm going to do revenue analysis by product line. I'm going to click Go, and it's going to examine my data, and it's going to devise a proposal that matches this intent. If I don't like what it did, I can change my intent, and it can generate a proposal. Let's suppose that this makes sense to me. I'll add this proposal, and it will begin a model for me that I can then manually adjust. If I want, I can go here and I could say, well, I want to bring in my sales fact as well as my my marketing fact, and maybe I want to bring in another dimension. There's my target fact. I'll bring that in. And you see how it's joining automatically? See, it's using the metadata that is out in my data warehouse to manage these joins. But you notice that I've got my file here, and my file is not joined to anything. Well, and just like in a framework model, right, standalone query subjects are not particularly useful. So I can create joins in this tool, and I'm going to join it to the product dim. I'll right-click and do join, and it allows me to specify my join columns. So I'll join on product on both cases. It allows me to specify whether it's an inner join, a left, a right, and outer. It lets me do one-to-many, one-to-one, many-to-many. And because it's using DQM, it has that filter and join optimization component that was introduced with dynamic query mode in Framework Manager and Report Studio, where the one side of a one-to-many relationship is run and filtered, and then those results are used to pre-filter the many before the join is done, which can increase performance tremendously. So that's actually baked into the tool. But in general, the notion is I can join objects. So if I uploaded 3 files and put them in a data module and I joined them, well, then I could have data from all 3 files in the same report, in the same crosstab, or in the same dashboard, in the same bubble chart. So the data modules will let me manipulate the relationships between uploaded files and data servers. You might also have noticed that I can start a data module from an existing data module, so I can build on one that already exists. So data modules is a new metadata object that I can create reports from or dashboards from. And this is the kind of modeling that you may find that you want to push into the hands of some power users, different people than you have using Framework Manager for your stewarded packages. So it's an option. Again, you can turn on and off these options using regular security. So it's not a have to, it's a you may notion in terms of pushing this out. But this is a very exciting notion. Now, this is not as powerful as Framework Manager. I don't want to imply that it is, but there is enough power here to give, again, put in the hands of your users the ability to produce the analyses they need without IT intervention. Well, the 3 steps are model, author consume. If I don't give them a way to model, I haven't achieved full self-service BI. So this is the modeling tool that allows me to fully achieve self-service business intelligence notion. All right, so that is all of the new components in terms of things that I can create with the tool. And again, we'll be presenting a webinar and recording it in case you miss it on dashboards and data modules soon. So keep an eye out for that announcement so that you can register. With that said, I'm going to go back to my slides and now finish out with what's in and what's out relative to Cognos 10 when I upgrade. So we talked about the new experience on the web. This experience is across all devices. It's not just the browser experience. It's the same experience when you use the downloaded app and you log into your analytics environment. We talked about the smart search. We talked about the fact that it indexes immediately without the index having to be run explicitly, and then that new recently used list. This welcome screen landing page replaces the Cognos connection. It's essentially retired because, of course, you saw a Cognos connection-y look when we went into the admin console. But for all intents and purposes, it's been retired. You might have noticed those coach marks. I didn't point them out. Let me just quickly run back and go back to my welcome screen. And these blue dots are coach marks. These are intended to give you hints, guide you, coach you through the use of the tool. You can turn them on or off in your preferences, but that's baked into the tool. I understand they're going to extend and expand on these as releases come out, but coaching you rather than making you read manuals is the concept here. All right, so back to my slides. We talked about the flyout and the wide view in terms of navigation. There's the wide view. We talked about the more button. When you hover over, you get a more button. And if the wide view, you get your breadcrumbs just like you did in Cognos Connection. We talked about the fact that my content and team content are now called my folders backwards. My folders and public folders are now called my content and team content. Now, if you use portal pages and tabs, it's important to note that your portal pages will all upgrade to Cognos 11. And you will be able to click on them and they will launch and they will work just as is. And indeed, you can even edit them in 11. What you can't do, however, is create new ones. So those pages will all still work and they'll all still be there. Now, in the Cognos Connection, I could click a button and make a page a tab in the Cognos Connection. Now, that functionality is not available in Cognos 11. Some other things more esoteric that you might be doing, you might have assigned a starting point in the public folders. In 10, where everybody started 3 levels deep into a folder, you can't do that, at least not yet. In the Cognos Analytics, the home screen is the welcome screen. You can update the home screen to be a report. So if you want to land in Cognos Analytics on a dashboard, run the dashboard, set it as your home, and that will be your home view. Right now, you can't set it to a dashboard, but I would expect that that sort of thing would come in future releases. If you have branded your Cognos Connection portal, you can brand the Cognos Analytics portal. It's a much more simple task than it was. It's editing a few JavaScript files as opposed to needing a full-on theme designer, but you can still brand the portal. We talked about the new search engine, and we don't need to schedule an index job. We talked about authoring that merges all the goodness of Report Studio and CWA into this new reporting tool. Now, it turns out on the back end, the report service and the batch report service that is running is the exact same one that was running in 10.2.2. So all the reports that you upgrade, if you've already upgraded to 10, 10.2.2 specifically, all the reports that work should still work because it's the same back end. And it's also the same viewer on the front end. For those non-interactive reports. So that should give us some good confidence in terms of the upgrade. Even the XML report spec hasn't changed between 10.2.2 and 11. Now, I have upgraded content from 10, 1.1, 10.2.1, 10.2.2 into Cognos Analytics, and all those upgrades went very successful and were very easy when I did them. So I'm feeling pretty good about this upgrade. And again, we have that webinar on upgrading if you want more upgrade info. The user interface profiles, the Workspace Advanced Profile notion that was introduced in 10.2.2 is not available in Cognos Analytics. The notion here is it's not needed. I have that interactive viewer that allows me to do some basic authoring, and then I have the new authoring tool that encompasses all of the things that were in CWA and Report Studios. So they have not moved those profile notion forward. We talked about the templates being easy and in a folder. No new output formats, no new security options. We talked about the legacy studios. So they're there if you want them to be. They launched, they haven't changed. All your existing reports will come up in non-interactive mode. All of your new reports will default to interactive mode. You can update any report, upgraded or new, to be interactive or non-interactive. Workspaces I already talked about are exactly the same as they were, except since there is no more Cognos Workspace Advanced, there is no more do more button that would launch it. Administration is identical to what it was before, plus you have departmental administration functions that you could delegate if you wish. My Datasets has been replaced with that upload files, so you no longer need a DB2 backend for the upload files, which is a great improvement. Metadata is the same. All of the metadata tools, Framework Manager, Cube Designer, Transformer, all come across, all work the same way. All of the query engines are still part of the tool. So infrastructure things, the gateway, like I mentioned earlier, is removed. Rave for visualizations is exactly the same. Lifecycle Manager is exactly the same. How you log in and authenticate, how you do security is exactly the same, and how you upgrade in terms of the options for upgrading is the same as upgrading from 10. So with that, I'll get to some questions, and I know I've run very late, so I'm not going to be able to get to a lot of questions today, but I will answer all the questions you've submitted by email soon after this webinar. So this first one, is Metric Studio available to be integrated with Cognos Analytics? Yes, it is. And there are instructions that have been posted. You actually install the 10.2.2 version of Metric Studio, and then there's a task that you run to integrate it into the legacy list. Does this version work with relational and dimensional packages from Framework Manager? Yes, it does. So I didn't show you any dimensional activities. Now, data modules cannot create dimensional outputs, only relational outputs at this time, but Framework Manager can still do DMR, and of course you've got all of your cube technology, and your packages from Framework Manager can include OLAP data sources for sure. And I think I have time for one more. How will single sign-on be implemented? All right, so single sign-on is done by leveraging the optional gateway, and then you use your web server like IIS or Apache and manage the single sign-on options well, in the Windows world, like identity mapping or Kerberos, the exact same way that you did, or nearly the exact same way that you did in previous releases. And I see I have a ton more questions, but unfortunately, I'm out of time for today. Thank you so much for attending the webinar today. I look forward to having you on another webinar in the future. Until then, best of luck. Enjoy working with Cognos Analytics, and we'll talk to you again soon.